Stay with me, because by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly where your retirement money stands and exactly what not to do next. Let's start with the basics. What actually happened and why it matters for your wallet. On February 28th of this year, the United States and Israel launched military strikes against Iran. Within days, Iran shut down the Strait of Hormuz. That's the narrow waterway between Iran and Oman, through which roughly 20 million barrels of oil flow every single day. Think about that number, 20 million barrels every day. When that flow stopped, the global oil market went into shock. Brent crude shot past $120 a barrel. Gas prices at American pumps surged 40% in a matter of weeks. For anyone living on a fixed income, for anyone depending on Social Security as their primary source of money, those 4 months were brutal. The average retiree drives less than working Americans, but they still drive to doctors, to pharmacies, to grocery stores, and every one of those trips costs significantly more than it did in January. On top of that, when energy costs go up, everything goes up. Groceries, utilities, prescription medications that need refrigeration, anything that gets shipped anywhere, all of it crept higher. And that inflation, that war-driven spike in prices, directly changed what Social Security was going to pay retirees next year. Now here's what changed last week. On June 14th, American and Iranian negotiators finalized a memorandum of understanding in Islamabad. 3 days later, on June 17th, the presidents of both countries signed it. The terms include a cessation of hostilities, the reopening of the Strait of Hormuz, the lifting of the American naval blockade, and the beginning of sanctions relief for Iran. The war is over, and markets responded immediately. Oil dropped. As of this morning, it's sitting at $74. That's down from over $120 at the peak, nearly a 40% decline. Stock markets rallied. The S&P 500 is now up over 10% for the year. 401k balances are near all-time highs, and energy analysts are projecting continued downward pressure on oil prices as Gulf producers ramp back up. Iranian exports resume, and those roughly 80 million barrels that were stranded in tankers waiting to move through the strait start flowing into the global market. Relief is coming. Real, meaningful relief. Just not instantly. Let me walk you through the 3 financial areas that affect retirees most directly right now. First, gas and grocery prices. Oil at $74 is significantly lower than the $120 peak. But the way gas prices work, they don't fall as fast as they rise. When oil prices go up, gas station owners raise prices within days, sometimes hours. When oil prices fall, those same stations tend to hold prices higher for weeks, sometimes longer. They call it rocket up, feather down, and it's been documented in the data for decades. So while the direction is clearly down, don't expect your gas station to immediately reflect $74 oil. Give it 4 to 6 weeks. By August, you should be seeing meaningfully lower prices at the pump. Groceries are slower still. Supply chains take time to normalize. A lot of what you pay at the store reflects transportation costs from months ago. But by fall, assuming the peace holds, you should start seeing prices stabilize and in some categories come down. Second, your retirement accounts. This is where the good news is genuinely significant. Let's say you had $100,000 in a retirement account at the start of this year. When the market dropped 8% in early March, that became roughly $92,000. A lot of people panicked at that point. They moved to cash. They thought the market was heading lower. But here's what happened next. Starting in late March, as ceasefire talks progressed, the market reversed sharply. The S&P 500 bounced 19% from its March lows. That 100,000, if you stayed invested, didn't just recover, it grew. As of today, $100,000 invested in a broad stock index at the start of this year is worth roughly 110,000, up 10% for the year. Despite a war, if you stayed invested through the volatility, you came out ahead. Third, your 2027 Social Security COLA. This is the one nobody is explaining correctly right now, so let me break it down clearly. 6 months ago, before any of this happened, experts were forecasting the 2027 cost of living adjustment at about 1.7%. Small, almost invisible on a monthly check. Then the war started. Gas prices exploded. Inflation jumped to 4.2% nationally, and the COLA forecast skyrocketed, all the way up to 4.7% by early June. Retirees who heard that number got excited, understandably. But here's what you need to understand about how the COLA actually gets calculated. Social Security only looks at 3 months of inflation data: July, August, and September. That's it, the third quarter. Whatever inflation looks like during those 3 months compared to the same 3 months last year, that's your raise. Everything that happened in March and April and May and June, the peak of the war inflation, none of that counts directly. What counts is what's happening to prices right now, and what continues happening through the summer. Oil is at $74 today. If it stays in that range through July and August and September, the inflation numbers for those months are going to be significantly lower than the peak forecasts assumed, and a lower inflation reading means a smaller COLA. The current range of projections is 3.8 to 4.7%. But with oil falling this fast, 3.8 is looking increasingly likely. Some analysts are already starting to revise downward. The official announcement comes in October. That's when we'll know for certain. Now, let's talk about the 5 mistakes, because this is the most important part of this video. Every time a major economic disruption ends, retirees make the same mistakes. I've watched it happen after the 2008 financial crisis, after COVID, after every significant market event of the last 20 years. And right now, in the next 30 to 60 days, those same mistakes are going to happen again to real people, costing real money. Mistake number 1. Rushing back into the market after sitting in cash. If you panicked in March and moved to cash when the market dropped, I understand why. It felt like the right thing to do. But if you're still sitting in cash right now, while the market is up 10% for the year, you've already missed the recovery, and the worst thing you can do now is rush back in all at once because you're afraid of missing more. Markets that have already recovered sharply don't always keep going straight up. Sometimes they pause, sometimes they pull back. If you dump everything back into stocks right now at the top of a recovery and the market has a normal pullback of 5 or 8%, you're going to panic again and sell again at another low. The right move is to get back in gradually, over several months, not all at once. Talk to a financial advisor before you make any large moves. Mistake number 2. Assuming gas prices have already returned to normal. They haven't, and they won't for a while. Oil is at $74 today, but remember where it was before the war. In late January 2026, oil was around $68 to $70 a barrel. We're not back to pre-war levels yet, and even when oil gets there, gas prices lag behind. The refining capacity that was disrupted during the war takes time to come back online. Distribution networks need to normalize, storage facilities need to refill. If you've been holding off on a major purchase or a trip because of gas prices, wait another 4 to 6 weeks before making that call. The situation is improving, but it's not done improving. Mistake number 3. Planning your 2027 budget around the highest cola forecast. This one is going to catch a lot of people off guard. 3 weeks ago, every financial news outlet was talking about a 4.7% raise for 2027, and a lot of retirees started mentally spending that money, adjusting expectations, telling their families. But with oil now at 74 and falling, that forecast is almost certainly coming down. Build your budget around 3 to 3.5%. If the raise comes in higher, wonderful. Use the extra for something meaningful. But if you plan for 4.7 and get 3.8, you're going to feel that gap. Underpromise yourself. Over-deliver to yourself. Mistake number 4. Ignoring Medicare. I know, Medicare feels like a separate topic, but it's not. Whatever COLA Social Security announces in October, Medicare Part B is going to announce its own premium increase at the same time. And historically, Medicare premiums go up significantly when inflation has been high. Last year, Medicare jumped nearly 10% and ate almost a third of the COLA before it hit anyone's bank account. With medical costs still elevated from the war period, with supply chains still recovering, there is no reason to expect Medicare to be gentle this year. Whatever raise you get from Social Security, subtract what Medicare takes before you figure out what actually lands in your account. That's your real raise. Mistake number 5. Thinking the economic impact of the war is over just because the war is over. This is the biggest one. Wars end. Economic aftershocks don't. Think about what 4 months of disruption to 20% of the world's oil supply does to a global economy. Factories that couldn't get fuel had to slow production. Shipping routes that were rerouted added costs that got passed on to consumers. Food prices that spiked because of transportation and fertilizer costs don't just snap back the moment a peace deal is signed. Economists are already warning that it could take 3 to 6 months for supply chains to fully normalize. Some categories, like food and prescription medications, could take longer. The war is over. That's genuinely good news. But don't mistake the signing of a peace deal for the end of the economic effects. Plan as if prices will stay elevated through the end of 2026. If they normalize faster, great. If they don't, you won't be caught short. Let me leave you with something honest. The past 4 months were hard for a lot of retirees. Gas prices that were completely out of control, grocery bills that made no sense, a stock market that scared a lot of people who couldn't afford to lose money. The peace deal is real relief. What's happening to oil prices right now is real relief. Your 401k recovering is real, but the people who come out of this period in the best shape are not the ones who celebrated the loudest when the deal was signed. They're the ones who stayed calm on the way down, stayed invested, didn't panic, and now they're not making the same 5 mistakes everyone else is making on the way back up. That's the difference between reacting to what just happened and positioning yourself for what comes next. You've been watching this channel, you know what's coming, now you know what to do about it. Share this with someone who needs to hear it. I'm George, see you in the next one.